If it's 11 a.m. Eastern Time, it's LinkedIn Live, Hour of Empower. The word of the day is technology. I am so blessed and honored to have two wonderful gentlemen here today with me who have some great experience and knowledge and are in a position where they're happy to share with others. I've got Jeff Lackey here, and I've got Vincent W. Allen.
Hello, guys.
Thank you, Vincent. And Jeff, chat's open. We depend on you to direct us, make our time here as relevant and valuable to your time, thought, and effort. So before chat takes over, let me introduce Jeff. Jeff, why don't you introduce yourself and what your initial thoughts on technology are?
Well, thank you, Donald. Really appreciate it, and nice to meet you, Vincent. And glad we were able to have this time together with a fabulous audience that you've put together, Donald. I'm excited. So my name's Jeff Lackey. I've spent over 28 years in corporate America, leading teams that have hired over 1 million people across 70 different countries in 8 different industries. And I've just had the pleasure of being able to create operating models that have been agile and creative and innovative, and so that has been really my passion. Recently, in the last year, I've built my own company, JKL Advisors, which is an HR talent and talent acquisition consultancy, as well as created a podcast calling Growing Your Business with People, that's really dedicated to helping leaders to figure out how to grow their business with the biggest and most important investment that they have, which is people. So really excited about that. In terms of technology, I'm going to tell you that technology is a tool that enhances my ability or our ability to create value. And that's really where I start with. So I'm going to turn it back over to you, and we can certainly.
Okay, well, thank you for the start, Jeff.
What that means as we go.
Okay, very good. Appreciate it. I think that's a great liftoff. And with that, Vincent, why don't you say hello to the audience and share a little bit about your thoughts on technology?
Hey there, my name's Vincent W. Allen, and I've, similar to Jeff, 30 years in my field. Started out in, broadcast production, event production. So we're talking like theater, television, film, this kind of stuff, and really got going in the live streaming business in the very early days in the late 90s, early 2000s. So I've been running with that ever since. In terms of technology, I think it's apropos that we're talking about technology today, and right off rip, Jeff's internet connection just drops on us. So I did a little bit of dramatic irony at the top of the show. But in terms of technology, to me, I agree 1,000% with what Jeff had to say. It's a tool. And if you think about, when people think about technology, they think about like one of these, like a mobile phone or, AirPods or a computer or things like that. But really, Jeff is right. Technology is a catch-all. It's a tool. If you think about the first cave person picking up a rock and using it as a weapon, or, creating an arrow and putting it on an atlatl to be able to, kill game at distance, that was the genesis of technology, and everything since then has just been, line upon line, precept upon precept. As we improve a little, we go back a little, we improve some more. Sometimes it's one step forward, 2 steps back. And it's the process of human beings really mastering their environment, through tools or concepts or ideas, is really where technology is for me. As a, technologist, for over 30 years, it's really just building every day, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, I agree with both of you so much. And I'm seeing now the technology is an integration closer and closer between the person and the tool or the instrument, right? A lot of times you had a little distance between your IBM mainframe and the people who are using it. And now with all the personal ways and professional ways you can communicate, and different mediums like audio, like video, like LinkedIn Live, it also brings the humanity and community into it, right? So
100%,
from being an individual interaction to a collective, and now with AI, you layer that on in top of it. So a lot of it is, how do you stack all of your technology and align it with your communication capability. With that said, let's introduce a few people from the audience. Elizabeth is here. Elizabeth is great. Been on the show 3-4 times. Hope to have her back. I know Jeffrey and Elizabeth have an interaction that's really cool. Elizabeth is also making it fair and saying hello to Vincent.
Hey there, Elizabeth.
Hey, Elizabeth.
Here today has been with us for 9 months at least, every week, sometimes 2-3 times a week. Really made this happen as an anchor to the show. Plus, has launched her own show called Awesome Journey. It's on Tuesdays at 1:11 p.m. Eastern Time. So really, this has been an opportunity to use technology to build experience in areas that were thought to be far more difficult. I know when people used to say, do a video, it's like, well, I got to script it out. I got to do it. I got to edit it. I got to produce it. I got to promote it. I got to support it. And most people are not too happy with themselves. LinkedIn Live doesn't give you that opportunity for change or adjustment. So with that said, Ashif is here also. Ashif is up there in Canada. Always glad to see you. Ashif's here every day. Good day, all. Glad to be here to learn. And watch out, because Ashif is going to bring some really cool quotes today and comments, and I can't wait. So with that, Vincent, what's your thoughts relative to where this is all going? I know you do a lot of traveling and do a lot of consulting. So what is it that's really driving you these days?
Well, I think where we are right now, Don, is we're at an inflection point, and we've seen this kind of thing before, right? Like if you've been around any length of time, you would remember when the iPhone became a thing, when social media became a thing, when the internet became a thing, when computers became a thing, right? And that's where we are right now, where we see whether it's ChatGPT or Bard or any of these kind of things that are sort of very AI driven. That's what's pushing the pace right now. But the reality is that we're seeing continued miniaturization in technology. We're seeing, camera tech, for example, go from HD to UHD to 2K to 4K, 6K. There's 8K cameras on the market. We're continuing to see all of these things driving in the direction of decentralized working models, of leveraging AI to do the stuff that nobody really wants to do, and to be able to do complex computational mathematics, around the clock, and to do things that that humans just can't do from a computational standpoint, and to do them much faster. And so I think what we're seeing sort of this acceleration into whatever the next version of this is going to look like. If you hearken back to the 90s, no one ever thought, and you can go back and find these interviews where everyone's like, oh, we're never going to shoot movies on video. Everything's always going to be on film. Film is so much of a richer medium. And nowadays, you're lucky if you find anything shot on film, right? And so we're right at that inflection point where things are going to change. And the difference between then and now is that then, and I'm sure Jeff can speak to this too, is that you had individual verticals, where you would have TV was one vertical, movies were another vertical, the internet was another vertical, computers were another vertical. And these things have been marching incrementally closer and closer together for 30 years. And now we're right on the precipice of all of these technologies being layered on top of each other, and it all becoming one thing. And so if you're in the business world at all, no matter what you do, whether you're HR, whether you're a director of finance or whatever, like, you have to know technology, or you're going to be unemployable within the next maybe 10 years, maybe less.
Well, or maybe know someone who knows technology and focusing on core competency, because I was fortunate to be on the front end of things that, like eBay. I happen to have a national chain of specialty retail stores at that point. And I came home one night, my son, who was about 12 at the time, was playing around buying something on eBay, and I never heard of it, saw it. I just happened to say, take my newspaper ad, put 2 items on, and within a year, we're eBay's largest tool seller. And Amazon's largest tool seller. But it was just seeing something and saying, wow, you don't need a store for this. You don't need, you just put it out there, someone buys it. And what I'm seeing is over time, everything starts to get closer and closer to each other, right?
Yeah, 100%.
So I see change as who wants to get in front of it, not whether it's going to last, because if it doesn't last, it'll morph into something even better. I remember I had to go to a Blockbuster to get my AOL disc to put in to get internet access, and then you had to go back and another one. Before I get too off track, Jeff, this is a fascinating conversation because it seems to be expanding and accelerating at such a great pace that change comes to you whether you come to it, and it changes you. So, Jeff, what's your thoughts?
So thank you, Donald. I've been studying AI before most people know how to spell AI, right? I've been interested in predictive analytics, machine learning, and those things for probably well over 12, 15 years, and been watching the evolution. And what I'm gonna start with at a very high level is to say that, like, I love technology. I love being more efficient, more effective. I like how it can automate things, automate the administrative, how it can augment, how it can enhance our ability to do better work and be able to have, you think about Google Maps. Like, I don't know how I would get anywhere without Google Maps anymore, especially in the Boston area. Like, I just went to Woburn this morning for breakfast. I would not dare try to go to Woburn on a bunch of paper maps, and try and get there within an hour and back. So, but also technology requires a curious mind, like someone who's willing to learn and experiment with what is the art of the possible to see if they can get that maximum impact, right? We're talking about it here. We're experimenting with LinkedIn Live. We're experimenting with this technology. I'm experimenting with Fireflies Fireflies AI actually being my note taker, for all of my notes and having AI. But I will tell you that you're right. The convergence was on technology. That's where it started. Then it went to data, convergence of data. Now it's convergence of intelligence, right? So it's actually the morphing it's the convergence of intelligence that says, where is intelligence coming from? What are the people? How do we get rid of things like bias, right? Or how do we instruct bias, destruct bias, and create algorithms or capabilities to change the way that the world thinks? And I look at it and I say, if we want to use technology as an augment, that will be phenomenal. The question is where? So for example, in CVS, I had 38 different technologies as I led talent acquisition for a company that we were hiring 212,000 people annually. And I had to layer in 37 new technologies. And to your point, looking at tech stacks, looking at the integrations, looking at data, looking at how all put together. But we morphed it. We put in the tech, and it wasn't just for tech. It was also, we created agile environment, a culture of creativity and curiosity. And then when the pandemic hit, I mean, you might have heard of it, that thing that happened in 2020, right? We weren't caught off guard, right? We weren't like, oh my gosh. We were a little bit, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? But we also said, actually, we have the technology, but we also have the curiosity and the capability inside. And we created things that nobody had ever done before, blending our technology to create solutions that were unique to the circumstance. And that's part of what you have to be open to, is like, one, you have to get ahead, not knowing necessarily where the end is, where you're going to use it, but then be ready and have an open mindset, a growth mindset that's allowing yourself to pivot quickly to whatever situation that you're in. In that case, we had to grow from 105,000 hires a year. In 2 years, we grew up to 212,000 by 2021. And that was with no significant increases in our headcount or our people, but it was leveraging hard onto the tech and the capabilities and the curiosity and the innovation of the team.
I think we lost him again.
Well, I think you make so many great points, Jeff, in that a lot of times it's attitude towards technology, not just knowledge. And some people, like myself, can't wait for the next technology, the next innovation, to learn it and add to it. And some people, for whatever reason, resist it, stay with legacy as much as they can for as long as they can. And maybe they found a way to be uncomfortably comfortable. But at the same time, it should really match what your intention and what your goal is, right? So if you want to get somewhere faster, better, with better, let's say, more aligned people, you got to get on the front end of something and be not only exciting, but be involved with something exciting, something that people, there's a benefit to knowing more than somebody else who thinks it's harder than it is when you know it to be easier, because when you can show them what it is or help them be what it is, it was a bigger leap than they had earlier. So with that said, let me cover some more comments. Ashif, good day all, glad to be here to learn. Maria has hey LinkedIn troublemakers. Okay.
That's us.
That was good.
Yeah, that's you and me, Jeff, right? We're the LinkedIn troublemakers, right?
Yeah, and I'm here in the middle. The question is not what you look at, but what you see. Henry David Thoreau, so well said. Elizabeth seconds that with bingo. And, I think everybody every day has to reevaluate, reassess how they fit in, what are they fitting in with, and what are they integrating to become more of what they have. So, there's more tools in the chest, but there's more conditionalities, there's more relativities. And then when you bring the people factor into it, that's so important, because how do you stay friendly? How do you stay personable? Leverage technology without making it too focused on something of that nature. So with that said, Vincent, what's your thoughts?
Well, I think we talked a minute ago about people who are, resistant or recalcitrant to adopt a new technology, right? And we've always had that, right? I mean, if the man was meant to fly, God would have given him wings kind of ideology, right? Where you've got something new that comes along and your business is, the way you're getting your ROI has been the same for 20 or 30 years. And you've got executives who are resistant to that change. We see that in the ilk of Jamie Dimon, who keeps talking about we can't work remotely, it's not efficient, which all of the numbers suggest the exact opposite of that, right? And so I think what happens is you have businesses, especially older legacy businesses, things like banks, things like hedge funds, things like law firms that are super constrained by governmental regulation, and the idea of bringing in new technology that they don't understand is scary. And so they don't do it. And they sit on it and they sit on it and they sit on it. And eventually some disruptor comes in, totally turns that industry on its head. And then you see these big companies going out of business. A really great example of that is Kodak, right? If you've been to Rochester in the last 15 years, it's a ghost town. But 30, 40 years ago, it was a booming economy because you had all of the, Kodak Eastman film processing and camera development happening there. And why did that happen? They had the process for the digital camera in their laboratory on their shelf, and they shelved it because they were making so much money off of film processing at your local 24-hour film processor or hour film processor that they decided to not pursue that. Ideas don't stay in the bottle forever. Eventually someone else discovers how to do it, rolls it out, and the rest is history, right? And that happens over and over and over again. And I see Jeff nodding his head, like over and over again in the business world, someone innovates, people want to sit on it or shelve it, and then it ends up, the toothpaste gets out of the tube some kind of a way, and then it ends up at one of your competitors. And so that's what we see over and over and over again is humans innovate. That's what we do, right? And eventually the cat's out of the bag. And so we have to continue to move forward. But unfortunately, sometimes the almighty dollar dictates what we do instead of what could be our go-to-market tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. We're focused on what our go-to-market has been for, a month of Sundays. Right?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I think with all that said, it seems like change is coming faster from all different directions. And that's why I think networking, having a community, because you're not going to be an expert on everything, and you're not going to have the time, even if you were, to coordinate all that into something going forward. So really, I think one of the key elements, or two key elements, is reinvention is necessary, right? I was in business for 37 years. I had to do at least 7 different reinventions about every 5 years, knowing when I started my first one, it was going to wear out and I better be ready for the next one. And I think bigger companies with bigger resources used to use their muscle, right? In retail, I mean, if Home Depot had 500 stores, what am I going to do with 20, 30 stores? But when websites became available, they ended up with channel conflict. Everybody had one website, right? And if all you had was a few stores, that one website could be where all your eggs were. And going forward, there's always discrepancies or gaps between the change and the non-changers. And again, who can get out there in front, be courageous, persistent, when it is lonely and you're the only one and you start to doubt yourself, why am I the only smart one in this whole world? Where is everybody else? But once you know that what you know is what you believe, and I think everything is communication today, information, and trust. And I think that's the biggest element of trust is, does this technology work for me? Is this information real? Is there something I can build a trend on? Because when things are changing dynamically, you've got an ever-changing playing field. So it's really getting balanced in your thought, one step behind, one step forward, and you're no place. But with that said, let's see what Maria has to say. And nothing wrong with troublemakers. They are needed. Well, we're officially qualified as that. I've also always resisted.
That's going on my business card, Maria. That's going on the wall.
Okay, a bumper sticker for sure. I've always resisted, and now I am always ready to learn more, but we can't do it alone. There's always YouTube. There's so many ways to learn. I mean, when I meet somebody and I want to get to know that person, I go to YouTube and see where are they showing up? How are they showing up? How are they responding to what they're promoting? And, why not buy some vowels before you solve the puzzle? Right?
Right, 100%.
If I was on Wheel of Fortune, I'd just start with vowels. Loving the conversation. Dave was here the other day. Wonderful gentleman, helping a lot of veterans out there readjust to society, Navy vet. Technology is simply a tool to be embraced, leveraged at some level for each individual. Just as technology is unique for each individual, not everyone should hammer from a store shelf with many options. So well said, and thank you for thinking about it. Ashif, always remain open and under construction. Learn to earn more. Omar's here. I'm actually going to be on his show. He's got Zoom, like Jeopardy, Lumardi, whatever. Good morning, guys. Great to have you, Omar. Ashif comes back with always remain open. Great. And Maria is all AI is reinventing how we invent. Changes from AI do not come from its application in day-to-day life, but through altering the way in which innovation is managed and supported. And then Maria says, on your business card, just tip the hat to stepitupcoaching.com. Shameless plug.
Of course.
Leslie's here. Leslie will be here Saturday with Catherine Chadwick. Another great individual. Leslie's been with us for months and has her own show. Think and Grow Rich on Fridays. Mind Over Matter has an audio event on Mondays. So we're all here to support each other. And Leslie actually publishes a calendar every week of everybody's shows that she knows, and she's promoting everybody. So
that's great.
That's terrific. I mean, why not? We believe here the saying is, if you can't do it, could we do it? Right? And can we help you do it? And I think that's where the value comes in. There's enough opportunity. There's enough non-use of technology and information that sharing it only softens the market, makes people more aware of it, and then gives them a chance to share knowledge back to you based on how they integrated it or applied it. So I think that's really the key. So getting back to you, Vincent, what was a technology or an event that really changed the way you do things or think about things?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think I mentioned at the top of the show that, I started in production very early in my life, right? And I think the thing that changed everything for not just me, but most people in my field is that, once upon a time, if you were going to shoot a movie or a TV show, you went and you got all these cameras, and then there was a process of, printing the film and getting it, processed and developed and et cetera. And then in the late 90s, early 2000s, Canon came out with a line of cameras called the XL1, right? And it shot on a mini DV cassette. I'm sure if I dig in a drawer somewhere, I still have a few of them laying around here. And it was shooting on analog tape, but it was a fully digital signal. And you had interchangeable lenses, and it was the first camera that was like sub $5,000 that you could get an interchangeable microphone, an interchangeable lens, and it was a fully digital signal flow. And it took your turnaround from weeks to hours. Right? Like you could go on a location, do a shoot, dump it right into a laptop and get that thing edited down and onto the news or out to a producer or a director within an hour. Right. And that was not possible before that. And one of the really inflection points there was a horror movie called 28 Days Later. Right. And what they did was they went and bought a pallet of these things that, that were, used cameras after the Olympics, and they shot their film from 30 something different angles. Right. And so every shot had 30 something different angles with all kinds of different lenses with different focal depths and all this kind of thing. And it really changed the way we shot everything. Because before, you might get 2 shots at the exploding helicopter. Now I can shoot an infinitude of times. I can shoot from every angle I want to shoot from, over the top, and all this other kind of stuff. And that really changed everything we were doing. All of a sudden, everyone was shooting digitally. Everyone was editing digitally. And then as the internet and social media continued to develop, all of a sudden we had something called a content creator that never existed before. Like, you were a TV producer or you film producer, you make music videos, you do that kind of stuff. There was no such thing as a live streamer or a content creator. YouTube was still years away at this time. And so it really was the thing that set us on the path that we still are on, right? Now everyone does it with their iPhone, but it's still all the same kind of thing, right? And that's really the piece of technology that changed everything we do in my industry. Right. And in terms of then that sort of evolved into live streaming, and we're doing this right now. Right. And
absolutely. That's a great example. Same question back to you, Jeff. What was it that kind of put the light bulb on and made you kind of amazed at what could happen?
Well, I guess I've been pretty enamored with tech from the beginning. I still remember joining my first corporation and working with Andy Thompson to build out a database for a recruitment applicant tracking system out of Microsoft Access, right? And being one of the first people to actually advertise jobs on the internet and programming in HTML, so that our jobs were the biggest of any of them. So we knock out all the competition, and nobody else could see our job, anything but our jobs, right? So I mean, it's just silly little things that you start with, all the way to the point where at one point in CVS, I brought some experts in artificial intelligence in recruiting, Paradox. So we got the CEO of Paradox came out. At that point, it was just a smaller company. Now they're worth over $2 billion, right? Some thought leaders in the area of technology and automation. One of my friends was actually hiring 30,000 people a year with 3 people. He had so much automation that he could do it for all the different hairstylists and hair cutters across all of Regis and all that organization, with a very small population of individuals. Brought all those people together to talk to my team to help. And to your point, you guys said it's really about the people. It's not the tech. Right. It's how you use the tech. Right. And so it was trying to light that inspirational fire behind the team, the leadership team, my organization, to say, What is the art of the possible? Where do we need to be in 5 years and 7 years that we aren't there yet, but what are the steps that we need to take to get there so that we're on the right path? So we're thinking ahead, and that we're thinking, and that we're actually planning and acting it out in a planful and thoughtful way. We wanted to get to the place where we could do a hire within what I called the 2-hour hire. I never quite got to the 2 hours, but I got it from like 28 days down to just a couple days. Right. So, yeah. Okay. Well, I failed tremendously. I didn't get to 2 hours, but I got it, but we went down to a very small number of days. It's thinking through, what is the problem that you want to solve long-term for the organization? What are the things that it needs to be able to do, and the competitive advantages that it needs and that you need as a leader to have? And then how do you planfully step through it? And you get some thought leaders in there that can help articulate what the art of the possible is. Even if you don't get all the way there, you can get 90% or 80 or 70% there, and you're so much further than your competition. I was getting Disney coming to my door saying, hey, talk to us about AI, all the cool things that you're doing. I was having people from all over the world coming to my doorstep saying, talk to me about the amazing stuff that you're doing within CVS, because I can't believe that, all the cool stuff that I'm hearing about, and be like, we're building it ourselves, right? We're growing it from the inside, but we're also leveraging partners and technology and capabilities that are outside of our four walls as well. So it was very exciting, but it's about getting the internal buy-in from your stakeholders, the business leaders that were on your team, vision casting of the art of the possible, making sure executives can kind of hear and see what that is. The people, what I call my investment community, right? Because those are the ones that have to help pay for some of this, right? And then showing them the return on investment routinely back to your investment community to say, hey, remember how we were at 28 days? Now we're at 14. Oh, by the way, we're down to 12. We're down to 6. We're down to 4. We're down to 2. How does that feel as a retailer, not having to wait 4 weeks to get somebody in your door, but actually less than 4 days, right? And the impact that you can have on that is so powerful to those leaders. And I'm not just talking executives. I actually was in the pandemic. I was talking to the store manager, and he was struggling to find people. The dude broke down and cried. He was under so much stress because his team was fighting to get people. And so we were right at the tipping point of launching a huge campaign where we're going to hire 50,000 people in one day, essentially. Right. And I told him all about it, and he hadn't heard about it yet. He was so excited. He started crying out of sorrow from crying out of joy. Right. He was thrilled. Technology is meaningful to the people who need it, because they need it to be able to survive in their business, survive in their work. One of the things that we were working on was within CVS was a kidney care capability that people would not have to go 3 hours to get kidney care. They wouldn't have to go to get they would actually be able to take this box, which used to be the size of a full-fledged refrigerator, and then shrunk it down into basically a micro fridge. And it could be ported to a home and moved from one place to another. And eventually the goal was so that people could actually do it for themselves. Can you imagine? I mean, somebody who's so sick that they're having to go through these treatments, not having to drive 2-3 hours each way, but actually having that in their home. Technology is not some concept. It's actually something very tangible, very real, but somebody has to have the vision, the power, and also be able to bring people along so that they can activate it, because execution is everything, right? You can't just have a great vision. You have to be willing to do the hard work of executing it. Hiring 212,000 people. You see all this white hair? Some of that's from them. The other is my kids. This is from trying to hire all those people. So this is the stuff we're talking about. Yeah.
Well, that's beautiful, and I think it illustrates it so well. Looking back at my past, one of the tipping points for me is getting IBM registers when they first came out. Right before that, it was like you had tapes, and you just had a drawer that opened when you took the money. And at that time, each register, and you're talking early 80s, so this is over 40 years ago, cost $18,000 a piece, and was using a 286 processor. And then you had to take the diskettes and have them couriered down to our main facility, plugged into a System 34. Ultimately, it became a modem that took like an hour to download one store's process. But here was the cool thing, is that we got information 2-3 days sooner than we would have through our index cards, which mean now all your buying decisions are more relevant. The other thing is we became, I always found a competitive advantage, either based on new things or new technology. And I moved from Detroit to Denver, and in Detroit, they had a much bigger newspaper, and I was an advertiser there, but they had zones, right? So it was big enough you could advertise North Zone or West Zone or whatever zone. In Denver, it was one zone. You bought the whole paper. So I figured out, well, if you can get enough locations, that ad costs nothing to every new location. So I would start running 2-page ads. I was in the top 20 advertisers in Colorado in my early years. And that's when Sears, Mayday, you had the department stores. Getting back to this, I had a 3-day advantage on buying. And as soon as it came in, I then bought this really sophisticated camera that allowed me to produce camera-ready ads. Before that, you just send in a proof. You get a proof back, and and that was 4 days. So if you compress the time between buying and promoting, your turns start getting a lot better, right? And now your competitive advantage is 2- or 3-fold. And eventually we became dominant, and the people who had to pay 6 times more per store than we did for advertising. And that's where you really corral everything. But I think to put another touch on the conversation, the key is going to be, how do you marry tech with right? And really think to depend too much on technology and lose the humanity, right? The personal messaging. That'd be a catastrophe going on. Anyways, that was my take. Is just, but when you.
But Don, let me ask you a question. Jumping in, we always talk about the outcome, but can you remember back to the moment when you discovered that opportunity to make it camera ready, and what it took to get to the place where you discovered that you had that, finding that nugget, discovering, oh, I could save 4 days. Like, we always talk about the light bulb, but we don't talk about the 9,999 experiments that it took to get to the light bulb. So, just curious what led up to that.
Yeah, that's a great question. I really appreciate it. It's funny, you do something and then something happens. And based on what that something happens is, now it makes something else available to you, right? In other words, you got to have a certain amount of scale to justify. With three registers a store times 6, that's 18 times 18,000. That's a $300,000 investment. And if someone says it's only registers, they didn't understand what those registers now allow everybody in the company to leverage. And the other thing I learned, to your point, if you're small and you want to get big, get with bigger players who can support you. So what I did is I became an IBM customer, right? Every time they ever had something they thought they could help me with, as long as they could, I embraced it. They'd finance it. So you say, well, that's $300,000 40 years ago. Well, if the benefit you're getting pays for the cost that you're financing, right? It could be 300 grand, but if it costs you 4 and you're getting 10, you're getting 6, plus the capabilities, plus the confidence of knowing I can buy this, I can sell it before anybody even gets it out on the market. And little things compounded over time. And the same thing with the newspapers. At one time I was spending, you're talking the 80s, 50,000 a month in newspapers. Well, to buy a machine that costs 35,000 saves you 3 days. And now you're using photography where before you're using rubber glue because you'd have to cut a picture, put it in a box, get it all ready, send it down, wait till the night before to make changes, and then it went live. It made everybody's life easier. And then you found out you can get more done with less people. So now the people saving, or now the people are running the machines instead of being the machine. And everybody starts moving up in value, importance, and responsibility. So, Vincent, you wanted to add something to that?
Yeah, I wanted to jump in real quick. I mean, what you guys are really talking about is what's the value of an hour, right? Exactly. I mean, you're talking about your cash registers and the cameras and all this kind of stuff. And we go through this every day now with the, work from home or not work from home or like whatever, what's the value of an hour? What's the, is really what we're talking about here, because it's like you might spend whatever amount of money you spend to develop a system or to just bring in a pre-developed system from an IBM or someone like that. That's saving you, like you said, a day, 2 days, 3 days. That's helping you be so much more nimble. And what you were really doing was, in project management, we talk about is like this agile scrum type framework where you're like, how can I buy back time? Right? How could I put a system in place where if this took me 3 days and I put this new camera technology in, where now I save maybe 2.5 of those days, that I can now turn around and focus on some other thing while my competitors are still taking that 3 days to get that same advertisement out. I've got 2.5 days to focus on sales or to focus on staff development or hiring, or it's Jeff, it's like what you were talking about. How do we go from 28 days to 2 hours? And we didn't get to 2 hours, but talk about failing forward, right? I mean, how do we get there? And I think that's really what we're talking about here. We started top of the show talking about what is technology to us. And it's really a tool to allow us to do the things that we want to do, better, more skillfully, more efficiently, that gets us to the customer much faster, right? And whoever a customer is, it's not always a client-facing thing. Sometimes your customer's internal, and it's just getting that photocopy or that email out, 45 seconds faster.
Yeah, that's a great point, Jeff. You have something?
Yeah, I just want to play off of something Leslie said a couple times. Learn is one thing, study is different. Study. What I'm hearing from you, Leslie, is fall in love with the problem, right? Which is really what we're talking about here, is really understanding that problem and working through it. So I'm not sure if you guys have ever heard about the advent of how the Sony Walkman, which is the predecessor to the iPhone, came to be. Have you guys ever heard that story?
No, I'm happy.
But please, it's a fantastic story. Please tell it.
Yeah, the CEO of Sony had been studying the problem, and had been seeing all these people walking around with headphones, but also watching people walking around with boom boxes on their shoulders, and saying, what if we could just blend that together and create that so as a smaller device that they could actually have headsets? And so he actually designed the very first Walkman. He goes to his engineers and he says, I want you to design this thing, and basically had it all mapped out, right? And it had taken time. He gives it to them, and they're all excited. They're thrilled. But then it goes into production and design and development, goes through all the different levels of approval, and they come to the unveiling. The CEO's right in the front, and they have a big stage and lots of lights, and they rip the cover off of it, and what do they see? A miniature boombox. Why? Why? Because the engineers were excited about the concept, but the layers of middle management said, well, customers don't want this. They don't need this. They have no idea. Well, what they didn't understand was they actually would, but they'd never seen it before.
Right.
They couldn't understand the concept of it yet. So actually the CEO went straight back to the engineers and said, middle managers, you're out. I'm working directly with you, and we're going to build this thing from scratch. We're going to build it. And thus the advent of the Walkman, which eventually was the predecessor, and the whole reason why honestly the iPhone and the iPod and all those things ever came to be eventually was because of the advent of the Walkman. And the fact is that somebody had a vision. They'd fallen in love with the problem. They really understood the problem. They understood the market, the people, and they were able to pull all that together. They had studied. And I think what I'd love to hear is the fact that we want to encourage people to really learn. It's just not having a eureka moment. You're not just, laying in bed one day and all of a sudden this idea pops out of nowhere. Like, if it doesn't take a lot of work for you to get to the place where you have that eureka moment, I would not put a lot of money behind it. It's probably not worth the paper it's written on,
Well, real quick to Jeff's point, I think when all of the tumblers come together, right? And you hear the lock open in your mind, right? Because a lot of times you see someone like 70% of it, I get it. The other 30, I'm still a little bit opaque on. Is once to your point, if something took 28 days and got down to 2 days, everything that was involved with that 28-day time frame changed. Yeah. Right. And what that offers is more options, right? If I don't have to spend time here, either I save money on labor or I redirect the labor to something that has more value, more spontaneity. I mean, again, I was the biggest Toro dealer in Colorado. So Colorado's a great place for snow at times. But, if you know there's a blizzard tomorrow and you can have an ad for it tomorrow versus 5 days and you miss the window, and it's also knowing you have options. I could do this now that I never did before, but because of that, things I didn't think I could do now become real again. And what's even more valuable is when it circulates through the team. Like, we got a secret weapon here. Hey, we got something that is so cool. And everything is so cool until something cooler comes by. I know when we were raising a family, we got one of those beta cams or VHS cams, and you carried around a 20-pound battery pack, and then you had a huge camera, and then you had to integrate it into your TV somehow. But everybody loved it because before then it was never there. And until it got smaller and smaller, even I used to always wonder, they used to have the VHS recorder separate than the TV. And I said, why don't they just integrate it in the TV so you don't have two pieces? And eventually they did. But you just need a little advantage compounded over time. And then everybody who thought it was impossible. I mean, the gentleman who broke the 4-minute mile, right? Roger Bannister. Right? Everybody, it was even medical people said it was physically impossible for a human to break the 4-minute barrier. But what was fascinating, after Roger did it, I think in the 50s, the next year 8 people did it, right? Because they knew it can be done. And I think it's that collective activity. It says, hey, if Jeff can do it, I know Jeff's I can do it too. Or if anybody can do it, given enough time and resources, I'll get it done. And smart people find other smart people who can, build and complement their core competency instead of being a master of all these things. So, this is so fascinating.
Just a quote, you just hit it. Nelson Mandela, everything's impossible until it gets done. I love that quote. So thank you for teeing me up on that one.
I want to piggyback on what Jeff just said. So there's two things, right? So we talked about Roger Bannister. It's in psychology textbooks now. It's called the Bannister effect. Everyone says it's impossible. Can't be done. You're going to liquefy your insides by running a sub 4-minute mile. And then all of a sudden everybody can do it, right? You've got middle school kids now that can run a sub 4-minute mile, right? So there's that piece. Like it's like I said, it's impossible until it's done. But Jeff, when you were talking earlier, it reminded me of something the late great Kobe Bryant used to say when he would get asked about his practice habits. He would talk about being up at 3 a.m. and going to the gym and being the only guy there, getting up shots, doing his routine. And then he would go practice for 2 hours, go get something to eat, go sleep, come back again, and he would get 4 or 5 practices in a day, and he would talk about if I do that every day, while everyone else is getting up at a regular time, going to practice, multiply that by 5-10 years, I'm so much farther ahead of anyone who's trying to compete against me, and they have no shot, right? He talked about falling in love with the process, like the process of getting better. And if I can do that constantly, then other people are going to look at me and I'm going to inspire them to be great at whatever it is they're passionate about. He was really famous for talking about that. And it makes me think of all of the conversations we're having today, makes me think about that. It's falling in love with the process, because there's always going to be problems to solve, right? Like there's always going to be the next thing, but falling in love with the process of, trying something, refining it. What did we learn? Fail forward. And then to your Walkman story, what that story has always taught me is that middle managers don't need to exist, right? It's like get the visionaries in the room with the tech guys who like have the know-how. Like, how do I build this thing? How do I program this thing? Electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, what have you. Get the guys with the vision in the room with the guys that know how to build it, and cut the fat out. Because oftentimes then you end up with a miniature boombox, right?
Well, I think a lot of it is just, they say people who don't work on the edge are taking up too much space. And you always want to know, hey, what's around the corner? It's the curiosity factor that keeps a lot of innovators going. It's like, hey, this was good, but if you tweaked it a little here, what I found that really made a difference in life and business is if you can compress time and space, you're going to have a great advantage. When I got into business, there was warehouse distributors, jobbers. There was like 4 different layers of distribution, and slowly those elements went direct to consumer. Walmart, their biggest thing was not what they did, but they came in as first adopters of satellite communications. And what it turned out, Sears was the big player at that time. The key thing is they could get information, and they can get store managers talking to each other every Monday. Right. And they had a 4 or 5 point distribution cost advantage. And in retail, if you're grossing 40 or 35, 5 points that goes to waste and inefficiency, not just bottom line. And then if there's an esprit de corps, you want to be on the hottest thing going. You want to have all the bells and whistles. You want to be able to punch buttons and see things happen. And then now you got your time back. What are you going to use with that time? And then how do we do better? How do we learn from each other with what we just learned and continue to innovate and keep it exciting? And what happens? The customer feels it even though they don't see it. There's a vibe that when you're working with someone who's really on the cutting edge, doing fun things, you want to be associated with cool. Everybody can give you a product. Can they give you an experience? So it looks like we're almost closing up shop. I'll finish with the comments, and I'll come back for each of you to share your final thoughts. So Harvey says, and Harvey's here, actually it'll be our Sunday with Kelly again. Technology is a tool. It is constantly evolving, and we need to evolve with it to adapt and use our attributes to achieve more. We need to work with technology. I want to give Harvey a plug. He just started the franchise show, and he's a franchise expert in England. Thank you so much, Harvey. Ashif, good story. Well shared, Jeffrey Lackey. Maria says, hemodialysis device tech allowing companies to personalize healthcare. The need for transparency is relevant. Maria's out in Europe and always here every day helping out. Harvey says, don't be afraid of new technology. Live in harmony with it. They talk about living in harmony with nature. Let's live in harmony with technology. So true. Leslie, study is a good way to do everything. Have study teams, synergy and inefficiencies, saving time and money. Maria, great to have so many people deeply involved. Yes, it's a great story. Ashif says, Albert Einstein said, when you stop learning, you start dying. And he also said, if something happens, nothing can happen. Whatever comes, let it come. What stays, let it stay. What goes, let it go.
Mhm.
You know, and that's the key is it is what it is. Work with what it and not what it isn't or what you wish it would be. You know, I tell everybody, start today with where you are, with who you are, with what you got, because that's all you got. And it's that first step. You know, it's not where you know, people used to come into work and say, I hate starting at the bottom. I said, well, you're only here as long as you want to be. You know, start moving up, becoming valuable. No one's going to give you nothing. So, final words, Vincent. What's your now thinking on technology? Have you expanded your appreciation for it?
Well, I mean, I feel like I started out with a pretty good appreciation. Technology is kind of my business, right? So I've always had a great affinity for it, but I definitely think I learned a lot from Jeff today in terms of what he's been able to do, you know, with technology and AI, ML stuff. And in terms of like a last word, I think we all talked about it, but it's like, how can you shrink the gap, you know, compress, you know, space time to get to whatever your go to market is? And I think that my last word is we think about Netflix, right? Is the way that they revolutionized the world and put a global behemoth out of business, right? Almost overnight, right? Because the way that they figured out and nothing sexy, it was an envelope that they stuck in the mail. Right? It was a warehouse of DVDs and a distribution agreement, and it wasn't anything sexy. And it doesn't always have to be sexy. And then they just iterated little by little until they revolutionized the streaming game. And now everyone's in that game. But if it wasn't for Netflix's vision and them just doing being keen to, you know, scrub the toilets, right? Do the unsexy thing, stick a DVD in an envelope, and then you don't get another movie until you send the last one back. Right, is revolutionize the world we live in, you know, to the point that now you talk to young people now, and the idea that you can't just stream something on the internet was that wasn't a reality as recently as maybe 15 years ago is baffling to them. Right. And so I think it's like with technology, you know, make things easier for people and you're going to make $1 billion. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. I always, because I was very strong in e-commerce and then e-marketplace commerce, is don't make the customer think, don't make them do extra work, you know. And you know, Netflix was able to say, don't bother going to Blockbuster, we'll go to you, right? And eventually there's no return charges that Blockbuster used to level. But here's what's interesting: just recently, Netflix dropped the envelope thing.
Yeah, right? They did, like just a few days ago. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm saying is they milked it and long enough to get something that was a hybrid, right?
Yeah.
And everybody, if you can compress time, and that's what delivery to the door is. Through COVID, if it wasn't for DoorDash and all these other facilities, and in my opinion, without getting too deep, retail is compounding the wrong way. You know, I saw where so many people are closing stores because of theft, because of the inability to find quality help, because of every change that has been taking place. And one thing, if you look at change and the companies and the lifespan of a company, so if we go back to 1800, you see what a department store, the lifespan was, and then what a discount store in the 50s and 60s, and then what a specialty store, then they had the big boxes that was the rave, you know, Toys R Us. And all of a sudden, Amazon shows up and knocked them out. And everything, it's like musical chairs, less chairs, faster music. The ones who grab a chair are getting a good one. The ones who had one have to figure a way to crawl back. But that's the beauty of it. One person can make the change to get on the right side. A big company has a lot of legacy with people. They can't pivot. They can't change. Some of it is they don't want to change because they're on a 90-day window of stock price. So how can they
right.
when they fired in the present if they don't bring the numbers? So with that, a lot of quality things, but it does show this is a dynamic world. You can also take your bet and place it somewhere else, you know, your time investment. So Jeff, what's your final thoughts?
One word: people.
Love it.
People unlock technology. That's all you need to know. Understand how that works and invest your time in people and allow them to unlock tech. And then you can, and then a lot of your issues will go away. People spend a lot of time on finances and everything else. Pay attention to your people. and inspire them to unlock your tech.
Yeah, that's beautiful, because I think there's been an imbalance over time. Naturally being old school, when I was doing business in my early days, everything was in person. You had to go to a trade show, you had to go to a conference, you had to go to somebody's office, make an appointment, sit in a waiting room, go to lunch with someone, right? And since then, there's been ways to shortcut it, compress it, and lose that personal touch, right? Because here's the thing, technology is advancing faster than man is evolving. It might take another million years to get an ear, a third one, right? But technology now demands more capability from more people than ever before. And some people don't make the cut because, I've been thinking the other day, the reason why people are poor sometimes is because they can't afford to get rich, right? They can't afford the education or the investment in the technology or the access, right? But here's the thing, if you can bring those people in, all of a sudden, there's a gratitude knowing they couldn't have done it without you. And I think that's where you want to get to, is loyalty, honesty, integrity, because those are things that are so hard to achieve and so easy to lose. And I can tell you, in my lifetime, all my business partners primarily were a handshake and an understanding. Someone took advantage of somebody, the other person would make it right, even though it was a fair deal. But hey, if the prices changed overnight or something else, because it's like, hey, I'll do it for you because it's right, but I know you'll do it for me the next time, right? And we're safer that way. And documents are necessary just to define things. But I had a partner who said, all the paper in the world won't save you if I don't want to do something, right? Because of the resources and the leverage. So you never want to go to paragraph 3, sentence 2. You just want to do. So I think, Jeff, and your points of view, Vincent, were so invaluable because it kind of brings a bigger package to be seen by the audience. And what I love about this show is we're going to impact people we never will ever meet or know, who see this and glean one great idea, one motivational quote that says, now I'm ready, or now I'm going to take that step. And those are the things that I get gratified by, is, we're going to be gone one day, but what can we bring that can continue to live and share and benefit so many people? And I think shows like this really, drive thought-provoking ideas. And to the story about the Walkman, or to Vincent's stories, your story and your experience, someone just adopted easily. It's like a buffet line. They just picked it off the shelf and put it on their tray, and they're going to take it and enjoy it. So with that said, come back in 23 hours tomorrow. Let me see. We're going to, let me share real quick. Got some great people coming on the show. So I'll do that. I'll do that. Okay. Well, I won't do that. So anyways, with that, thank you in 23 hours. Trust me, I don't want to get the names mixed up. Thank you again, Vincent. Thank you again, Jeff.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. First timers, you did terrific. And thank you, audience. Without you, this doesn't happen. So have a beautiful, wonderful, safe day, and we'll